In this lesson, we're going to look at understanding roots, and in particular square roots, but we will move on to cube roots, and you can do more than that in other roots as well. But firstly, let's go back to the basic number system and see how that kind of general idea came about, which leads into the next part of what we're going to talk about. So if you look up here, you'll see Roman numerals. Now in the counting system, it was much simpler back when it was invented right at the start. It was things like there's one item, there's two items, there's three items, and so on. So when they created a number system, the Romans, they certainly up to three, there's one item, and then for two they had two items of the same thing, and then three for the same. The Chinese went about it in the same manner. They had one line, and for one, two lines for two, and three lines for three. Now our system, the Western system, is actually quite similar to that. We just don't realise it. It was still kind of this idea of 1, 2 and 3 going on, but what we did was we joined this up to get the 2, and we joined this up to get the 3. So it's a similar idea of this 1 item, 2 items and 3 items. After that, once the number system was created, then came calculations. Now you can add numbers together, but what was looked at was trying to get back to where you started. So say you've got 5 add 2 to get 7. Well, how do you get back to 5? Well, you do the opposite, which is an undoing function, which is a take away or a subtract. And then fast adding is just multiplying. That's all multiplying is, a fast way of adding. And then if you get 5 times 4 to make 20, how do you get back to 5? Well, you divide by 4. So these are called undoing functions, or reverse or even inverse functions, and that's kind of what we're going to concentrate on at the moment. So in mathematics, all functions have an inverse. This can be thought of as an undoing process, and we talked about this adding. How do you get back from adding? Well, you subtract, so it gets you back to the start. Multiplying, the opposite of that is division. It'll get you back to the start. I think 7 times 10 is 70, and divide by 10 you get back to 7. Now we've been talking about squaring numbers, so we want to think of an inverse or an undoing function for that, and that is where square roots come in. Square roots are the undoing of squaring a number. So say for example, let's try 4 squared. So 4 times 4 makes 16, so the square root of 16 gets you back to 4. Same with 5 squared is 25, square root of 25 gets you back to 5. Now, let's have a look in particular at square rooting before we go any further. Okay, so 8 squared is 64. If we want to reverse the process, which number times itself gives 64? That's called the square root. So the square root of 64 is 8. But we quite often see a symbol attached to this, and it's this wee tick. And you may have seen it before in your calculators. If you look at your calculators, you see these wee tick symbols. So we don't write the square root, we tend to use that as a symbol to denote the square root. Now sometimes square roots are not exact. For example, if you square root a number that's not a square number, 64 is a square number from the previous lessons, you'll get decimal calculations or decimal answers. So again, we'll look at that later on. But firstly, let's look at some things here. So imagine you were asked to calculate the square root of 4. Now some people think you half it. Okay, like the square root of 9 is half of 9 and so on, but it's not half, it's what multiplied by itself makes that. So in this case it's 2, because 2 times 2 makes 4. I know that's half, but this is one of the coincidences that 2 is half of 4 and also the square root. The square root of 9 is 3, because 3 times 3 makes 9. The square root of 25 is 5. Because 5 times 5 makes 25. And the square root of 49 is 7. Because 7 times 7 makes 49. Now again, only square rooting square numbers give whole number answers. They're all square numbers, all these. Now if you're using your calculator, then there's a tick button in your calculator if you're using a simple calculator. If it's one of these calculators, you tend to look for the tick, but sometimes got a square under it. If you push that button first, then enter the number and hit equals, it should square root for you. In the simpler calculators, you hit the number first and then the square root button. So what if we were to try and square root numbers that were not square numbers? So for example, what times what makes 5? Again, some people would jump in to try and half it, but that's not the case. You need to square root 5 in your calculator. So if you square root this, it's saying round to 2 decimal places. So if you square root in the calculator, what happens is you get this big long number. And it carries on. But what we want to do is chop it 2 numbers after the dot. So we want to get rid of these numbers here in the yellow. Now this is the most important one, the one next to the 3. If this number here is a 5 or higher, it will move that up 1. This is only a 4, so it stays as 2.23. The other numbers don't really matter, it's this one here that's important. Now if you were to do 2.23 times 2.23, because we've rounded it, it won't get you exactly 5, but it'll get you pretty close. Right, square root of 10, type it into your calculator, give it a shot, give it a try. Now you come out with this big long number. Now you can see it's a bit more than 3. Well, that's because 3 times 3 is 9, so a bit more is needed to get the 10. Again, you want to chop it, so this is the important number here, the 2 right here. Now because that's lower than a 5, it's going to stay as 3.16. Okay, right, square root of 30. Now 5 times 5 is 25 and 6 times 6 is 36, so it's got between 5 and 6. This is your answer that will come out, it'll be longer than that. Now we're chopping it 2 numbers after the dot. So this is the important one here, this 7 that's highlighted. Now because that's higher than a 5, that's going to go up 1 place. So it's going to go to 5.48. Right, last one, square root of 356. Okay, if you type that in, it comes to 18.8679 and so on. It will continue that. Again, this number is a 7, which is going to turn that 6 into a 7. And you leave it at that, 18.87.